No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken episode number 394. A very special edition today as we continue our countdown of the 50 worst of 2025. And my God, there was a lot to choose from this year. Labour's Lucy Powell revealed her true disdain of white working class British girls.
I don't know whether you saw the documentary on Channel 4 about rape gangs over
No,
this.
we want to blow that little trumpet now, do we? Yeah,
there was a real issue.
Let's get that dog whistle out, shall we?
Piers Morgan showed his true disdain of, well, all Brits.
The food was crap. Absolute crap.
Well, it was that way in the 80s when I was
Inedible.
here.
Right. Now we have some of the best gastronomy.
Amazing.
Insane. That is the argument used. Why should we flood our country with other people? Well, chicken curry.
And the Sussex's true colours were finally exposed.
Really, what Prince Harry wanted to do was to eject me from the organisation, and this went on for months. It went on for months through bullying, harassment.
Wow. So, for our countdown today, two of our Outspoken regulars and favourites, both independent journalist superstars on the Superstar panel. Political commentator, broadcaster, the man behind Addicted to News on X, Lee Harris, and independent journalist Emma Dunwell. She is the woman behind E Speaks Freely, one of the new independent journalism sensations in the United Kingdom who have really found their feet this year as the mainstream media descend into true failure. Remember, there is no live uncancelled after show today, but all of our royal content is available over on my Substack, www.outspoken.live, and we will be back live on Monday. That's along with the return of Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. I cannot wait for that. But now, let's go. So Narinder Kaur revealed she would leave the country and head back to India if Nigel Farage entered number 10 Downing Street, which probably would have been a massive boost in the polls for Reform UK. Here's the moment she announced that news on Jeremy Vine.
Nigel Farage is the most effective politician we have at the moment. Compare that with Keir Starmer, who's about as effective as a cat flap in an elephant house. He is hopeless.
How is Nigel Farage effective when he did Brexit and we're so poor as a result? How's he effective?
He has got his Brexit, that's what he's done, and soon, when he becomes powerful and the Prime Minister, he'll finish off Brexit. We'll get out of the ECHR, we won't be controlled by Europe anymore. Long live Nigel Farage.
All right.
He could be the saviour of our country.
You may be dealing with a Farage Prime Minister.
I'm going to leave the country, and I've said it on air
Where
now.
will you
I'll go
go?
to India. I'll go back to India.
There's
I've
nowhere
already been
better.
looking at property there. So
Have you?
Yeah, because
If Nigel Farage
I don't think he will come into power at all. I think
Yeah.
he'll be finished by another year. And I think, but if he does, if you're asking that question, I'm looking at property in India. I'll be gone.
But at number 30 of our worst 50 moments of 2025, just weeks later, having visited India, Narinder Kaur reversed her decision. Lee Harris, she's not going anywhere. That was all a lie, all part of the grift. Even if Nigel Farage becomes Prime Minister, Narinder, for all of her talk about how much she loves India, does not want to live there. Does that not say it all to you?
I think it does. I think she's... this is pure clickbait for Narinder. And she,
It's a clickbait grift.
It's exactly what it is. And I had a feeling that there was another lefty commentator that said the same thing about Boris becoming Prime Minister. I can't remember her name.
Yasmin Alabaya-Brown.
That's it. She said, and she's still here. So they all kind of say these things, but they don't actually mean them. But yeah, I think, like you said, it's a fantastic advert for Reform. I'd be putting that on repeat and running ads on the way up to the general election that you could get rid of Narinder if you vote for Nigel Farage. I think it's funny. She's funny.
It's so interesting, isn't it, Emma Dunwell? Because actually, Narinder doesn't want to be in India. She doesn't, because she could be.
Yeah, I mean, this is a woman that's lived in, I believe it's Leicester her whole life. I don't even think up
She's
until
in London now, but she was in Leicester.
She was in Leicester. I don't know what the situation is now, but I think for the majority of her life, she hasn't even held an Indian passport. And now all of a sudden, as soon as it suits her social media grift, all of a sudden India is her homeland that she's going to return to because everyone's so racist. And if she thought that Britain was so racist and everyone was a far-right thug, then why has she spent her entire life building a life here, paying into the system, benefiting from the system? And I'm sorry, but this is complete, like, this. If anything, this is immigration privilege. Because how many migrants who have come over here, even if they're first, second generation, whatever, would not be able to just, at the drop of a penny, just go back to or go to wherever they want to. It's complete privilege.
Absolutely. But it is all so convenient, isn't it? It's all so convenient for Narinder to decide to lean into her Indian heritage when it suits her. And interestingly, India forms a central part of number 29 on our countdown too. The moment, and I was furious with this, when Piers Morgan sparked outrage among patriots after saying, and he honestly said this, that he would happily replace the white English population in order to have a chicken tikka masala. Here's how Piers responded when Tucker Carlson challenged him on what he thought had improved about Britain after the mass importation of multiculturalism. Watch.
The food was crap. Absolute crap.
Well, it was that way in the 80s when I was
Inedible.
here.
Right. Now we have some of the best gastronomy.
Amazing.
Insane. That is the argument used. Why should we flood our country with other people? Well, chicken curry. Thousands of young girls get raped. Chicken curry. And I know this might shock a lot of people. You're going to want to be prepared for this. But me, as an Irishman, I have made pasta before. I know. Crazy. I'm not Italian, but I know how to make pasta. And even crazier is I have made chicken curry before. Crazy. Absolutely shocking stuff. You don't need a million Pakistanis in your country to enjoy a kebab. I know this thinking might be crazy to people like Piers Morgan, but I would eat potatoes for the rest of my life if it meant my country, Ireland, was always home to Irish people.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. Emma Dunwell.
Yeah.
Piers Morgan actually went one step further, though, also saying that he would personally trade in Tommy Robinson for a chicken tikka masala. And to me, all of this is just blatant anti-white racism, yet Piers Morgan isn't cancelled.
Well, this is the thing. I was actually just about to make that exact point. Piers at the most time, especially when it comes to the trans stuff, he's fairly based. You know, there's a lot of things that I do agree with him on. But yeah, he occasionally does kind of bow down to the multiculturalism virtue signaling lobby, and he does make these like anti-white jokes that would get people like Tommy cancelled. And yeah, I think that the fact that we've got things like the grooming gang scandal or the rape gang scandal, and people call it all different things now at the moment. It's just such an abhorrent thing that people don't even know what to do with it in their minds. And he's there talking about curry. That's what is so shocking to me. And yeah, anyone else would have got cancelled if they'd have said any kind of anti-white thing or whatever. But he can for some reason because he came from the establishment media.
Indeed. I mean, if you replaced white Lee in his posts, which were quite literally, I mean, he said, I would quite happily swap white English people for a tikka masala. Now, if you changed the word white and replaced it with black or Asian or trans or gay or women or any other group, there would be absolute outrage. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not prepared to accept anti-white racism anymore, even if it's coming from Piers Morgan, who is himself a white man.
Yeah, and it's disgusting that it's become acceptable to do that, and not just with Piers Morgan, but with the left in general. I think I watched that interview, the whole thing, and what struck me about it was two things. First of all, it's apparent to me now that Piers Morgan seems to manufacture his position on things.
Oh, totally.
Purely for click. Purely for clicks. So I don't think he actually believes every position that he takes. I think he does that for his advantage more than anything else. And the second thing is, right at the beginning of the interview, he actually did seem to acknowledge that there was the demographic change of this country was having an impact. but then he kind of refused to link that to anything else. So he kind of had this complete refusal to link the fact that we've got mass uncontrolled migration coming over to the UK. There is a cultural issue, but he kind of stopped at, he just mentioned it, but he didn't,
Well, he
didn't
wasn't
expand
even
on it at all.
prepared to accept, Emma Dunwell, that it was bad in any way.
Yeah.
He just described it as an evolution. And he doesn't give a damn about the fact that the English race in this country is quite literally being replaced. He showed his true colours in that interview. And I would argue that if this were happening in any other country, especially an African country or an Indian subcontinent country, where the native ethnicity were literally being replaced, because remember, Piers Morgan accepts that white people are going to become the minority, then there would be complete outrage. But because it's here, it's accepted as progress.
Well, because we're
according
British,
to Piers.
we're supposed to put up and shut up because we're seen as the colonialist bad guys of every other country's story. And I've seen tweets directly saying, like, you know, white genocide, why is that a bad thing? Oh, well, that's a good thing. Oh, and all this sort of stuff that, yeah, if you were to replace the word white with any other colour, any other race, religion, anything at all, you would be cancelled. Not only would you be cancelled, you'd probably be arrested.
Yes,
as we're seeing now.
Absolutely.
And they're just allowed to get away with it. So no, and I recently did Vox Pops going around London, and I was asking the question, does racism towards white people exist? And the answers were shocking. I even had a man who was from South Africa, and even he like kind of putty-footed around the question, and it really baffled me. I don't know where we are.
Just finish on this, what angered me about it genuinely is that Piers Morgan's minted. Like, he is a very, very wealthy man.
And he spends a lot of time, by the way, in a mansion in Los Angeles, in Beverly Hills.
And he's got a very lovely, beautiful mansion in central London as well.
And a house outside of central London too.
None of this affects him. No. Absolutely none of it. And he refused to acknowledge that. And that really frustrated me because, look, at least if you're going to be an annoying person, at least try and cover it up. He made no effort to cover it up at all.
He's putting across this myth that actually London's totally safe. Yeah. And it's like, it's not.
No, it's not, mate.
We all know it's not.
No.
Anyone who has spent time walking around central London or living in central London or actually any part of London in recent years knows that it is no longer safe. Yeah. Okay, at number 28, GB News and Talk TV added Ben Habib to their list, and it is a growing list of banned contributors. Here was the Advance UK leader speaking out about his cancellation on Outspoken earlier this year.
What I've said, because I've also been cancelled, as you know, by Talk and by GB News, is I'll go over
disgracefully.
I'm absolutely shocked by it, and they deny it. But it's true, because it's self-evidently true. I haven't been on. The day I launched Advance UK was the last day I was on GB News.
I mean, Emma Dunwell, it is undeniable now. Yeah. And remember, I was the founding presenter of GB News. I hosted the first show on GB News back in 2021 now. And at the time, there was a Conservative government in power, but it was very, very clear, and we were very clear in our mission, that GB News was not going to be a party political operation. This was about what was right. It was about freedom. Remember, at the time, there were all of these COVID lockdowns, so very often we would campaign against the government of the day, even though that happened to be a Conservative government in the form of Boris Johnson. But what has happened because of the growing political strength of Nigel Farage and Reform UK is that GB News is effectively now a propaganda outfit for one political party, which to me is so dangerous, because how can you say, and I know this for a fact, that two of their most popular guests in the past, Ben Habib, now leader of Advance UK, Rupert Lowe, now leader of Restore Britain, are both no longer allowed on the channel. Where's the justification with that? When they were part of Reform UK, they were on constantly. They were on all the time. And remember, this banned list, Emma, does exist because it also includes Katie Hopkins, it also includes Tommy Robinson, and a whole load of other sound people. So to me, I really struggle now to view GB News as actually a positive force in this country, because you don't want a broadcaster to be a propaganda outlet for any particular political party. No political party can be trusted.
Even if you agree with,
Yes.
with the party, even if you're supportive of them, because it's not, it turns it from a news channel
Yes.
into, I don't know, more of an entertainment show.
Mm.
And I watch GB News a lot. I still think that they do some fantastic work.
Yes, and there are good people there
and
still.
especially when it comes to things like the grooming gang scandal, they'll talk about it a lot more than BBC, ITV,
Yes.
other places will. So I think it's still. I'm trying not to, I suppose, demonise them too much, because I also understand, as a journalist myself, I understand the challenging political climate, and if you want to make something, sometimes a little bit you have to play the game, right? But there is no getting around the fact that it is anti-free speech. There is a ban list. This, like you just said, when it initially started, it was said that it was not supposed to be any kind of party affiliation, anything like that at all. And now it's all about reform. And it is all about reform. I mean, Nigel Farage has his own show on there. And
Lee Anderson.
Yeah. And it shows, it's mirroring the politics and the infighting that we saw within reform. I mean, I've spoken to Howard Cox. I podcasted with him around the time that he was exiled from reform because of his support of Tommy Robinson. And it's this kind of exile, if we don't like what you're saying, that we're seeing now. And that tells me as a viewer, I'm not saying that I know, but that tells me as a viewer that Farage is running the show, and that's not how it should
100%. And the thing is, I'm sorry, when you're getting rid of people, Lee, like Rupert Lowe, like Ben Habib, like Howard Cox, actually, you're not even being patriotic anymore, in my view, because these are great patriots. And the idea that because they don't sign up to a particular political party and are not a Farageist means that you should not have a voice on GB News is very disturbing to me. The other point that I just want to make, Lee, is that, yeah, you guys talk about Nigel Farage and Lee Anderson, but at least we know where they stand, right? At least we know they are reformers through and through. I probably have more of a problem, being totally honest, with other presenters from Michelle Dewberry to Martin Daubney to Alex Armstrong, who, let's be honest, might be good people, but want to be reform candidates at the next election. That is a huge issue for me, because they're having to pretend that they are an honest, impartial broadcaster when in fact they're not. They are effectively operating as a party political operative. Now, that's very different to, say, someone like myself or someone like Mike Graham, who's gone independent this year. We are both very clear. Sure, you know where we stand politically, and I absolutely voted for Reform UK at the last election. I've been very honest about that.
Yep.
But I do not want to be an MP. I do not want to run for Parliament. I don't want to work for Nigel Farage. And that, to me, is true independence.
This is a tricky one because, GB News, my experience with GB News, I can talk personally, they've been really good to me.
And they've given you a big platform.
They give me a big platform. I, basically was just a nobody. And everybody I have met there, including the presenters who I'm very close with, are just some of the most wonderful people I've ever met. However, now I've given you that preamble, it is genuinely a bit obvious now that Ben, because I didn't want to believe it initially, but it is a bit obvious that Ben and Rupert, who by the way, individually, I think they're fantastic.
Yes.
Ben gave me well over 10 minutes of his time at the Unite the Kingdom rally, so I could sit there, give him a really kind of long form interview. He's a wonderful man. I agree with him on a lot of stuff. Same with Rupert. I think he's fantastic. I've done a couple of podcasts with him, and I'm gutted, and I know a lot of other people are gutted that they can't hear their voices on GB News. I don't think they get everything right. I will try and defend a little bit, and you're welcome to shoot me down in flames. They are under the microscope at the moment from Ofcom. Now, I'm not saying that means it's all Ofcom's fault. It's not, because they are partly
because the thing is, I totally
that.
Agree with that. They are under huge scrutiny, much more than any other news channel. I mean, imagine if someone like James O'Brien was operating on GB News. He would have been taken off air years and years ago. But I just don't think it excuses this cancellation of figures on the right, because Ofcom actually demands plurality. And so we know that's why there are all of the crazy leftists on GB News. So maybe that is where I give them a pass. You don't hear me criticising them for having to put, Benjamin Butterworth or Jonathan Liss or any of these weirdos on the channel, because I understand why. They have to, by letter of the law, to be Ofcommunist regulated. But that doesn't apply
No.
to these cancellations on the right.
Well, I was going to genuinely caveat what I was saying because, yes, I know they're under the cost from Ofcom, and not just in terms of who they invite on, about the things they talk about. They are under a microscope. However, I've been giving this a lot of thought because I love them both a lot. I cannot work out. I don't think it is that. I've got to admit, I don't think it is Ofcom reasons. I think there are other reasons for that, and that's disappointing if that's the case. I can promise you, the people I spoke to, I have asked them, and some of them are quite senior presenters. They have genuinely denied all knowledge and said that I honestly don't know.
But it's bizarre. If you're a senior presenter on that channel,
I have
like
said to them,
I
why
was,
don't you invite them on?
Yeah, exactly. Get them on.
Get them on.
Demand that they have them on.
Ben Leo didn't he? Ben Leo invited Rupert on a couple of weeks ago, but it was I've been on the late show. It is a late slot. You don't
it's
start
midnight at night.
Yeah, you start at midnight.
Exactly. And so the suggestion there was that there's not an actual ban on Rupert because he might be able to go on a show at past midnight. But what is absolutely true, if you look at one of their flagship shows, which is certainly the show Jubes and Co., they don't appear anymore.
I don't get
and
that.
they used to appear all the time.
He was great on there.
Yeah. And he's amazing. Yeah. And he's a great patriot. And I think Ben Habib and Rupert Lowe are massive losses for GB News, but huge gains
Maybe they'll
in this
change
independent media space. So, I don't mind. Keep on banning them, GB News. More and more people are just coming over to us. Now, speaking of the mainstream media, at number 27 on our list of the worst of 2025, the Loose Women Meltdown. Yeah. The show was effectively axed this year, right? For half of the year, as the woke broadcaster struggles to survive the terminal decline of modern TV. And it resulted in Nadia Sawalha totally losing the plot, blaming, you won't be surprised by this, men, male executives, and mansplaining for the fact British women are switching off from this woke bullshit. Watch.
At the moment, all of us on screen are in work and are proud of what we do. But behind the scenes, there are people that are really suffering. And what you don't realise is when you attack the show, you attack them because you never see all the army of people behind the scenes and how hard they work. So to all my friends and colleagues behind the scenes that just got the most huge shock out of the blue, I'm so sorry. And Mark knows, don't you, how much of how upset I've been at home about it. I just can't bear it. So just be kind to people.
You know, where's the trousers about
Yes, exactly. That poor man. Poor Mark.
There's no patriarch
Poor Mark,
there.
who sort of sits there nodding, yes, Nadia. Yes, Nadia, I'm terrified of you, Nadia. But look, I mean, Emma, to suggest that the cancellation of Loose Women is the fault of men is quite something. If this show were a hit, if women still wanted to tune in, it would not have been cancelled for half the year. It's been cancelled for half the year because the show has gone so woke, it's actually impossible to watch.
Well, this is why people are saying now, go woke, you go broke.
Yes.
People aren't watching it. People don't want it. People want to return to reality. And yeah, the fact that they've just gone on and blamed men and the patriarchy, I was going to say women then, and the patriarchy and everything is just peak victimhood. And again, kind of like what we were talking about earlier with Narinder, it's privilege. They wouldn't be able to get on TV and moan about these things if they didn't have this kind of privilege. How about she goes out and gets a real job and goes and works like all of the other women who are doing a 9 to 5, and then maybe she can try complaining about the patriarchy. But I think until then, she just needs to shut up.
Yeah, I mean, come on, Lee Harris, you turn up for once a day, you blame everything on Nigel Farage and men, and people are just bored of that. They're bored of that. Loose Women used to be genuinely good when they were totally honest and there was a mix of political views. Like you had Carol McGiffin on there, who's now actually a regular, thanks to this year on Outspoken. But I mean, she is someone who, I mean, is absolutely a freedom fighter. And I don't even know if you'd say she's to the right, but she's certainly bold on all of these issues. And she just couldn't put up with it. And she's gone because she wasn't allowed to speak about any of this stuff. The fact that she was a Trump supporter, the fact that she's anti-vaccine, the fact that she's anti-COVID nonsense, all of that.
See, that is a real, because I'm not a big watcher of Loose Women. Not gonna lie. I think I might have said that the last time I was on. However, if you do balance, if you have a show where you've got those really annoying woke views, but it's balanced out nicely by someone like Carol, you know, if you've got that does end up in a good debate, watchable telly. But clearly they've not been doing that. And you know, when you look at the polls, I try and sort of address this in a political way as well. The British public are not buying woke anymore. They're just not buying it. They're moving on to something slightly different. You can see in the way that Reform are doing so well in the polls. The Overton window is massively moved through people in the independent media, etc. So I think the mindset of the British public has changed enough now where I can totally understand why, if it's just woke nonsense all day, they're not going to be interested.
Speaking of woke nonsense, at number 26 on our countdown, this was one of those jaw-dropping moments when Bob Villain, or I guess he's called Bobby Villain, isn't he? Bobby Villain, who's part of that British-hating rap duo group, which is called Bob Villain, went on Louis Theroux's podcast and exposed the BBC for who they really are, revealing that the hard left staff didn't seem bothered at all about his vile onstage rant at that left-wing shithole festival, otherwise known as Glastonbury. Watch.
Just to kind of show how mundane the whole thing was. It wasn't like we came off stage and everybody was like, it's just normal. We come off stage, it's normal. Nobody thought anything. Nobody. And even staff at the BBC were like, that was fantastic. That was fantastic. We loved that. And I was like,
that's such an NPC manoeuvre, though, isn't it? It's like any band comes off, you go, you smashed it, fantastic.
No, but that was like, this was a couple hours later, because it took us a little while to get, but like, they've nobody at the BBC at that time was there like, oh my gosh, but it was very normal.
And Lee, I know Louis Theroux was trying to say, they just say that to everyone. No. They don't. The BBC staff loved it. They loved what he had done on stage.
Tim Davie was in the audience.
He was there, the outgoing BBC Director General. It was only once the ordinary British public were like, this is utterly disgusting, despicable, anti-Semitic, all of those things, that all of a sudden the BBC panicked and realised, oh my God, we've got a problem on our hands here. Yeah. They showed their real hand to begin with.
100%. They're institutionalised. They're completely institutionalised. And for it was kind of almost the most unsurprising thing to hear him say, although it was very nice to hear him say it, because I don't think he realised what he was saying. But we've all known the BBC has been very anti-Israel. They've had to apologise multiple times since the conflict began. And it was a suspicion that we all had, not a very hidden secret. But just to hear it, that's exactly what happened. The BBC, everyone who works for the BBC's left wing, pretty much. And this would have been, they wouldn't have even thought twice about what he was ranting on stage, those vile comments that he was ranting on stage. And of course, when someone else notices this bubble that they're all in, like you say, they don't realise they're in this bubble until someone sheds a light on it. And then all of a sudden, like you say, they're all panicking. Because I remember when it happened, they were kind of making out, it was a big mistake, something technical went wrong. No, it didn't.
No.
You knew that was going to happen and you didn't mind. And that's 100%. the honest to God's truth is they didn't mind.
They didn't mind. And Emma Dunwell, we just know that if someone with even centre-right views had tried to express something political on stage at Glastonbury, all hell would have broken loose. Or imagine if Tommy Robinson wanted to appear at Glastonbury. Exactly. Yet this dude, who is truly vile, I mean, Bob Villain this year, unfortunately, was someone who I got to know. I'd never even heard of the guy before this year.
No, neither.
But he's proven himself to be a truly decrepit individual. I mean, someone who should be going to hell. And I do not say that lightly. I mean, he celebrated the death of Charlie Kirk on stage in the most revolting manner. He celebrated the deaths of Israelis. I mean, this guy's going to hell, right? But he's a hero to them.
Well, this is the way that the left ideology works. It doesn't matter how abhorrent it is to them. Whoever can scream it the loudest and get that horrible message out to as many people as possible is their hero. That's the way they see it. And yeah, I mean the making fun of the assassination of Charlie Kirk, abhorrent. Now, what I don't understand is why people are getting locked up all the time for Twitter crimes. And now this isn't just like this isn't just an anomaly. This is a really common trend. This death to the IDF channel. I've heard it multiple times on pro-Palestinian marches.
Yes.
That is a direct incitement of violence. Why are they not being arrested?
Totally.
Like, the only reason that I've seen in person is at these marches is the only thing I can think of is there's just too many of them.
Well, it's two-tier
to
justice
arrest.
again, isn't it?
But why did they not drag him off stage, or at least go up to him after and say, like, right, you're going to need to put out a statement saying that you weren't actually wishing harm? Because if someone had actually, like, let's say there's someone, a super fan, you know how people get over celebrities. If someone had actually gone and done something to an Israeli, I think he's partially responsible.
100%.
And they have actually, there's that other band, the Irish group, haven't they?
Kneecap.
They did get taken to court and they were cleared.
Yeah.
I haven't
So it
heard
doesn't
of
even
them.
matter.
And then, but for another one of Kneecap, it was dismissed.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, I actually think it's right for the police not to get involved. But when they're locking up anyone on the right for far less, that's where you've got to understand.
Yeah.
We all think, what the hell?
Yeah.
What the hell? So if you're Bob Villain, if you're Kneecap, if you're Zara Sultana, you can say whatever the hell you want. But if you're someone connected to Turning Point, if you're someone connected to Tommy Robinson, you're screwed. I mean, it's truly grim. But look, we're halfway through the countdown now, so let's get political. Because at number 25, this was the extraordinary moment when Reform UK's Zia Youssef quit the party after he threw a mega strop over Sarah Pochin's burqa ban proposal in Parliament, only to, and I couldn't believe this, God, I was disappointed, make a comeback just 48 hours later. Breaking right now, Zia Youssef has, in the last few moments, resigned as the chairman of Reform UK. Here's his statement on X. 11 months ago, I became chairman of Reform. I've worked full-time as a volunteer to take the party from 14 to 30%, quadrupled its membership, and delivered historic electoral results. I no longer believe working to get a Reform government elected is a good use of my time, and hereby resign the office. Wow. I mean, I was so happy because, look, I think the guy is the biggest weasel in British politics. I really do. The biggest fake in British politics. I think he wants to be the first Muslim Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. That's not something I think that anyone should want, given the truly historic battle we have. I think he cannot be trusted, even though he attacks the Conservatives all the time. He was a Tory himself right up until the last election. He seemed to have bought himself all of this access into Reform UK and has something over Nigel Farage quite clearly, because Farage, Emma, doesn't forgive anyone for the smallest indiscretion. You saw in that statement there from Zia Youssef, he was basically saying, this is just a waste of my time. This is a waste of my time. And 48 hours he was back. And now he is more powerful within Reform UK than even the deputy leader, Richard Tice. Zia Youssef is one of the main reasons that I have a major problem with Reform UK. I think the guy is dangerous. What do you think was going on here?
I agree. I don't think it was anything to do with the burqa ban on any level.
Totally agree.
I think it was to do with money. There was all of these especially around the time, there was all of these rumours on donations and how he'd got into the party. Like you just said, he essentially bought his way in. I mean, yeah, I think that there was some kind of dodgy deal going on. There was some fallout over money, and then he came back probably because they bumped up the numbers, or they gave him what he was asking for. And at the end of the day, Reform has run themselves like a company, meaning whoever buys the most shares is whoever's running the show.
But Lee Harris, he says that he takes no money. So he says this is absolutely nothing to do with the financials, which surely leads you to believe it's to do with power. It's about promises.
I think
it's about, has he been promised to be the next chancellor, for example?
It is a very odd, because the way it played out, the way he wrote that statement was very clear. Like he said, this is not a good use of my time.
He was having a total strop.
It was almost like he was burning the bridges as he was writing it. So to me, it seemed quite final. So I was also quite shocked that he made his way back in. But I do think this is more about ego than anything else. If you know anything about the spat between him and Rupert Lowe, there was egos involved in that. So, and it is very true from the people that I've spoken to on the Insider Reform, Zia Youssef is not the easiest person to work with.
No.
At all. I think
they can't stand him.
No, he's not widely liked. However, he is an exceptionally, I don't think anyone would deny he's a very good media performer. I'm not saying that counts for everything, but it does count for a lot. I can't explain why he was almost allowed to kind of waltz back in. The only thing I can think of is that Nigel Farage did not want him to go in the first place. That was a unilateral decision for him to write that thing. Farage probably did not even know that was going to come out.
I think that's definitely true.
They had a phone call between each other after this. Maybe it was just a knee-jerk reaction to this burqa thing. Whatever it was definitely Zia Youssef's fault. Because he didn't need to put that statement out. Why did he have to disagree publicly with Sarah Poachin? Even just from a party management point of view, it looked stupid. Yeah. So I was like, okay, guys, this is really amateur hour stuff now. Why he came back, I think it's kind of a slightly different story. I think it's probably got more to do with the fact that probably behind the scenes, and I have heard this too, he has got a lot of results in as much as that he's set up a lot of these the infrastructure. He's really helped to build. If I don't know this to be true, right? I have spoken to Zia once over message, and he seemed quite polite. But there's also a lot of people that told me he's a bit of an asshole to work for. Right now, I've worked for assholes who I really like in the past, but I've also worked for assholes who I very much dislike. However, I respect. I don't think that makes sense. So this could be a situation. Could be. I have no idea. This is just me guessing that he's very effective. He's very good media performer. He's a very good at behind the scenes, but he's a bit of an arsehole. And I think that's probably as much as to it. I don't even know. By the way, if he does watch this, I don't know you're an arsehole, Zia. It's just through what I've heard. You've been nice to me very briefly on the message that we spoke to each other. But
very interesting. Well, at number 24, this was a disgusting moment that exposed the Labour government for who they really are. Then Cabinet Minister, now Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. She was rewarded by the party for this. That's what's so shocking. Lucy Powell shutting down concerns over rape gangs as a dog whistle. This was her in conversation with Reform UK's Tim Montgomery on the British Bashing Corporation. Watch.
I don't know whether you saw the documentary on Channel 4 about rape gangs over
No,
this.
we want to blow that little trumpet now, do we? Yeah,
there,
okay.
there was a real issue.
Let's get that dog whistle out, shall we?
Okay, Lucy. Yeah. The councils, there were so many people who were so afraid for good. Can I just finish the point, just for one minute?
Finish that point, Tim, and then I'll bring in Helen.
Look, there were so many people in local government, in the authorities, who, for good reasons, were worried about upsetting community tensions, that those girls went undefended. Now, there were good reasons for it, but no one has still been brought to justice for that. So you tell me, Lucy, that this isn't a culture in local government. It's just not true.
Dear. Helen Morgan?
I mean, Emma Dunwell, you're someone who's covered a lot of what's gone on with these Pakistani Muslim rape gangs. That showed Labour's true feelings there. They just view this as racism. They just view it as a dog whistle. That is it. But I think what even shows Labour more is the fact that this woman, she may have been sacked by Keir Starmer in part as a result of those comments, but she was then rewarded by the party. The party elected her to replace Angela Rayner. She is now deputy leader of Labour. This party is so corrupt, so crooked, so rotten to its core, and this moment proved that.
Yeah, well, I mean, in some kind of twisted, really dark humour, Greater Manchester Police admitted that they'd ignored another 200 victims that same week that she made that statement. So it just really goes to show the complete disconnect. You know what? I keep saying disconnect. I don't even know if it's a disconnect. It's just a out and out, just turning a blind eye. They don't want to know, and when they do find out, they want to cover it up. They want to call you racist. This is what we've all been screaming about for ages now, like years and years, and the asylum hotel protests haven't woken them up. petitions in government haven't woken them up. Other MPs getting into positions of real like traction and getting these messages out there, that still hasn't woken them up. Elon Musk is tweeting about it, for goodness sake, and they still won't do anything. They still won't admit how much they've covered up, why they covered it up, and to what level this goes to, because we know that it's to a local council, to an elite level. It just completely shows them to be what we all think that they are.
100%. And I mean, Lee Harris, she talks about a dog whistle, Lucy Powell. Well, isn't the real dog whistle coming from Labour? And it is a dog whistle to the Islamists, because effectively the only way Labour knows that they have any hope of staying in power, which I think is gone, by the way, but the only hope they have is to somehow win back the Islamist vote that threatens them in so many constituencies, including, by the way, big names like Yvette Cooper, Wes Streeting, Angela Rayner, all likely to be swept away by Islamists at this rate, which is why you see Lucy Powell going down this
thin
path.
Majorities, a lot of them have, and that has a massive influence on their rhetoric. I thought this incident was possibly one of the most disgusting incidents that I've heard from this Labour Party. Second to only Keir Starmer, who said that people who even mentioned Pakistani rape gangs were jumping on a far-right bandwagon. No, I consider both of those. The first one was a massive mask-off moment, and this one, I honestly believe, was kind of like the mask was fully off at this stage, and we all knew it anyway. It's not as if we needed, especially those of us who are into politics and are following this, we knew this anyway. But this was a massive mask-off comment. If you listen to how casually that those words rolled off the tongue for Lucy Powell, that means, for everyone knows this, that means that she is constantly surrounded by people who think like that, and she has no qualms in speaking like that. She would never say something like that down her local pub or where it is, because everyone would disagree with her. So it just shows that the Labour Party, again, is completely institutionalised. They hate this subject because of the votes. They don't want to lose the votes. And also, I think probably equally as important, and probably not as important, but very close to being important, is the fact that Labour are massively implicated in this review. They know as soon as they start digging, this is why they voted against this inquiry 3 times, and they resisted it publicly as well, because they didn't want the exposure of their own Labour councillors coming out, which it obviously is. It's already in the report. Everyone knows it to be true. I just think it's a disgusting moment, and it told, for most of us, it just told us what we needed to know.
Disaster bullies, racists, and tourists who cash in on people's real issues. I don't think there's any way, genuinely, I don't think there's any way Prince Harry and Meghan Markle can recover from what has been a truly eye-opening 2025. I always knew the way these two operated, but they can no longer hide it anymore. And number 23 on our list of the worst moments of 2025, the Sussex's Centre Barley charity meltdown. As the boss from that organisation, Sophie Chandoka, a black woman, which made this particularly difficult for Harry and Meghan, publicly accused Harry of bullying and harassment and attempting to eject her from her position on the African charity. Here she was speaking on Sly News.
Really, what Prince Harry wanted to do was to eject me from the organisation, and this went on for months. It went on for months through bullying, harassment. I have documentation. There were board meetings where members of the executive team and external strategic advisors were sending me messages saying, should I interrupt? Should I stop this? Oh my gosh, this is so bad. In fact, our strategic advisor for fundraising then sent me a message saying she wouldn't want to ever attend any more board meetings or bring her colleagues because of the treatment. When that failed, Prince Harry started to brief, and his team, sponsors that I'd been speaking to against me and the charity, because that is a sure way of getting me out if it's seen as though I'm not being successful in my fundraising effort.
I mean, Lee Harris, it couldn't be any more damning because, of course, for so long, Harry and Meghan have tried to make out that the reason they're treated so badly and bullied by the world is because Meghan Markle is a half-black woman. there you have an actual talented black woman, Sophie Chandoka, who knows her shit, basically saying, no, they're the real bullies. And they even bullied me as a black woman. And you'll remember Meghan had treated this woman appallingly when they appeared at that polo tournament on stage together. So at the end of the day, to me, this was one of the big moments because all of a sudden, the narrative, the Sussex narrative just collapsed.
It's like another mask off moment.
Yes,
isn't
it was.
Because I remember when this happened and I was speaking to the wife about it and I was saying to her that we always had this impression of Harry and Meghan that they just weren't very nice.
Yes.
Like that they were a bit arrogant and probably have that kind of royal entitlement. Just from all the headlines that you see and the way they've reacted to stuff. So we already had this kind of pitch. And when we saw this happen, we were like, well, it makes perfect sense. Makes absolutely perfect sense. They seem like bullies. I believe every single thing that lady just said. And without any qualification, I'd just be like, yep, you're telling the truth. And I remember seeing, I don't know if it was that long after it, Harry being interviewed after this. He even came across as being a bully in that interview.
Yes.
And I was just like, okay, well, why doesn't anything stick to them? Like, seriously, why? Because they did an investigation on this very thing and they came out and said they couldn't find any bullying. But there was a couple of caveats, and I'm thinking, I just don't believe that. I don't believe that for a moment.
Yeah, exactly. It was almost like it was the charity commission. It's almost like we don't want to go there.
It was that.
We don't want to go there. Let's leave it to the charity itself. But what's so interesting, of course, Emma, is that both of Harry's African charities collapsed this year. We also had the disaster with African Parks. And it's like for so long, he was being looked after by people within the royal institution who he claims to hate so much. And all of a sudden, Sophie Chandoka came in. And the reason he didn't like it is because she was like, hang on a moment. This charity is basically operating as some sort of personality vehicle for Harry. And that's no longer working for the charity anymore because of everything that had gone on over the past 5 years, from the Oprah Winfrey interview to Spare, etc., etc. People don't want to put their money into it. So she's like, this isn't working for the people in Africa, for the people of sent to Bali, who Harry is meant to care about. But I would argue, and I think I could back this up, that his charities are now simply being used as PR vehicles. And that is sick. That is sick for a man who has so much time on his hands and could be spending every waking moment trying to change the world.
Well, Diana would be turning in her grave.
She really
right
would.
now. I
She
mean,
really
at the
would.
moment, especially this is like you said, the second charity for things to have kind of just exploded in everyone's face like this. And bullying, harassment, it has Meghan written all over it for a start. And yet there is some sweet irony about the fact that it's a black woman saying like, no, you guys are the bullies here, when they've spent the last, what is it, like 2-3 years now calling the royal family a bunch of racists, which I don't know, but do you know what I mean? They come out and they say these things all the time. Now the shoe's on the other foot, and all of a sudden they don't like it. And yeah, the fact that it's a charity, it's not just an organisation that's then been passed off and also does a bit of fundraising. It's a charity, and the fact that he's Diana's son just gives it to me just a whole other level of just complete piracy. Almost. It's disgusting.
They have like a well-documented history as well of people like leaving because they
Yes.
don't like work. And I checked this out.
So many.
21 departures since, and this covers Archwell, this charity, Invictus Games, and something called Travelist, with at least 21 departures reported by late 2024 to 25. People
And by the way,
don't like working for them.
reports in Vanity Fair as well that they had bullied stuff. Reports in the Hollywood Reporter that they had bullied stuff.
There's
to
a
the point
consistency
where
to it.
some of these staff members have ended up needing psychiatric care. So I just feel like this was the year that the bubble totally burst. Even woke people now. Because, here's the thing. Sophie Chandoka's probably pretty woke. That's
Probably,
my understanding of her. But it doesn't matter, because all of a sudden, Harry and Meghan's treatment is so bad that even if you're woke, you can't defend this. And actually, on a similar note, at number 22, the Sussexes arguably stooped ever lower as they used the unprecedented LA wildfires disaster to reboot their own flop Netflix series and to brief the paparazzi so they could get some positive coverage. Now, quite rightly after this, they became known as disaster tourists in chief. Watch. international outcry, disgust, actually, including from the Hollywood community, about her disaster tourism. And here she is at it again, briefing Town and Country magazine that reported Meghan made donations to Altadena teen girls' fire recovery through the Archewell Foundation. And guess what? The cameras just happen to be there. Any other celebrity can do this stuff without being seen, without briefing the media. But Meghan Markle has to tell everyone. And Emma, this was just so gross. I mean, we actually even saw major players in the Hollywood industry, including former actors, coming out and saying, you're just disaster tourists. And again, to me, that was one of those, there's no going back from this moment, because these were the people who were meant to be supporting you. Well, but they see through it.
This is the thing. It is so disgusting. Forgive me for reading this, but I just want to get the figures right, because the LA fires were just so horrendous. But it's more than 200,000 people evacuated, 1.5 million without power, neighborhoods reduced to literally apocalyptic states. And then they signed up for this, to do this thing anonymously to start off with, and then post it all over social media, like some kind of, it's like them people who go and feed the homeless, and they're like, you should all go out and do this, guys, and I'm all for promoting doing good things, but there's a big difference when you're millionaires who are staying out. I think their Montecito bunker is worth like $14 million, and they want to go out for a few hours and be like, oh yeah, we handed some bottles of water out. Good for you.
But Lee, they were even breaking the law. And I mean, we were able to prove this at the time, because in California, if there is a disaster like this, you've got to stay away from the disaster zone.
Yeah.
But they were actually walking all over these houses that had been destroyed before the occupants of the houses had either been told that their houses were destroyed, because remember, the locals didn't know.
Yeah.
And certainly the locals were not allowed to go back and find out if their houses had been destroyed, what had survived. Yet Harry and Meghan were there with the TMZ cameras in tow, traipsing all over this destroyed property. And I think that's where a lot of the anger came from the local residents.
I can completely understand. The optics are just awful. I mean, for a start. I mean, who's advising them for a start?
Well, I don't think they listen to anyone.
Probably no. Probably someone, and they're not listening. It looks awful. I remember seeing at the time, just thinking, even as someone who's not as educated on their daily itinerary or whatever, it was obviously awful to watch that they were doing this. This just seems to be a running theme, Dan.
Yes, it does.
We've just been discussing their charity and the fact that Prince Harry's been using that charity as a kind of PR exercise. Here they are using, again, people who are in some real trouble as a PR exercise. I just think it's...
And you don't hear them talk about it anymore, do you?
No.
I mean, it's when something is considered hot, they think, oh, let's jump on the bandwagon.
These people are probably still trying to, sorry to interrupt, but these people are probably still trying to,
of course they are.
replace everything that they lost. And they're not talking about it.
And Harry and Meghan, by the way, what have they donated? Look, if you actually want to do good, Meghan could have given a portion from every tin of jam sold. Now, it wouldn't have raised much money, guys.
She's not going to sell.
She's not selling much of that jam. And by the way, it's not jam. It's like running liquid. But the point is, that would have shown that she's actually prepared to put her money where her mouth is, prepared to put some of her own profit. Now, look, you see some corporates, Lee, even do this with, say, 1p. They say we're going to give 1p from every jar of jam sold. Nothing from Meghan, because she doesn't really want to care. She does it for PR. She's not prepared to put her money where her mouth is, and I think it says a lot.
Yeah, just in case they did fly off the shelves, she probably does. She's probably nervous about that being
100%.
a possibility.
Everything for her is about the money.
Absolutely. I think they're vile. Both of them are vile. I'm glad they're not here. As far as I'm aware, the Americans don't even like them that much.
No, they don't. But please don't come back.
Yeah, please don't come back.
Please don't come back in 2026.
Absolutely.
But at number 21, sticking with the royal theme, and this really was one of the worst moments of the year for not just the British royal family, but I would argue Britain as a whole. King Charles finally forced to strip his brother, the royal formerly known as Prince Andrew, after the Epstein scandal unravelled even more of his private life. It was a big moment of history. We broke the news live on Outspoken this way. Prince Andrew loses everything. In a bombshell statement in the last hour, King Charles has stripped his brother of his title of prince, booted him out of Royal Lodge, and effectively ended any hopes he had of a public rehabilitation. This is a seismic and historic decision as the pressure was being heaped on the cancer-stricken monarch. Some even saying the future of the British monarchy itself is at stake. So this was a difficult one, wasn't it? Because King Charles Lee, obviously suffering from very serious cancer. We've revealed here on Outspoken that it is terminal cancer, incurable cancer. We've tried to deal with that sensitively. Then he really didn't handle this situation with Andrew well at all, because remember, just 2 weeks before that announcement, Lee, he had thought that it was going to be enough just to release this statement from Andrew saying that he wasn't going to use his princely titles anymore, but he was going to stay in Royal Lodge. And Prince William had been advising him to go further, faster. Charles ignored him. And then 2 weeks later, all of a sudden was trying to show, well, I'm a really strong king. And it's like, well, you're not, because you didn't do this in the first place. But obviously, this is family. It's a difficult one. And I will make this point because I've always been nuanced in my coverage here on Outspoken. I've been on a bit of a journey in regards to the story. I certainly, when I was in the MSM, thought, you know, Prince Andrew was the worst person in the world. And you can go back and look at all of my columns celebrating his downfall. I have since learned that really when it comes to the allegations from Virginia Giuffre, she is not a particularly reliable witness in all of this. And it is a messy, messed up, complicated situation, which you never see, Lee, if you're watching coverage on the British Bashing Corporation, for example, which wants to be very clear. You know, Virginia Giuffre is like an angel on earth. Everything she said is true. And Prince Andrew is basically the devil incarnate himself. Prince Andrew, or the man formerly known as Prince Andrew, of course, he's now just Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, humble Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, made a lot of mistakes, Lee. This is not me defending those mistakes.
No, I get that.
But the story is more complicated than the mainstream media want to make out.
It is a bit more complicated, and you're absolutely right to bring that up, because the only footage that I'd seen on this was actually, as it happens, from the BBC. So before I even knew anything about Virginia Giuffre, I thought everything she was saying was documented fact. And as you rightly pointed out, she is a massive liar.
Yes.
Right? So she is genuinely, was a massive liar, I should say. However, we can't disprove or prove that. However,
and she died over the course of this year.
You
took
are
her own life.
absolutely right to point that out as well.
Makes things a bit more difficult.
However, it makes it very difficult.
I agree. I mean, I've been on the fence. I was really pro Charles when he took the crown, and I kind of my views have waned on him a bit. Certainly with his eco stuff, which we kind of knew about beforehand. But he has handled this
but
really...
he said he wasn't going to do it as king. And we trusted him.
I trusted him.
He said he wasn't going to be a political king. He was going to leave all of that at the door.
Went out the window straight away. And I was on GB News actually backing him, saying, no, he'll do it. No, he didn't.
No, I did too.
But with this particular situation, it's been really frustrating as an observer on this, because I've taken the William stance on this. I think he's had this nailed from the start. You've got to nip it in the bud.
Yes.
You've got to sort it out. And I think, maybe if I'm being on a human level, Prince Charles or King Charles now just didn't want to put the boot into.
No, he didn't.
Brother.
He didn't, because also
that shouldn't matter.
Well, it shouldn't. But I guess the briefing from the British royal family, which I actually revealed here on Outspoken because they had privately briefed the mainstream media, I thought it should be public. Part of that briefing, and I actually did think this was fair enough, Emma, was effectively suggesting that we've got to be careful here or we'll have another suicide on our hands in terms of Andrew.
Yeah, no.
You see, and we've already had Epstein. Well, I don't believe that's a suicide, but it's a death, which the deep state says is a suicide. We've had Giuffre, which was definitely a suicide, in my belief. So we've already had 2 suicides connected to this story. It sometimes does feel a bit like the mainstream media will not be happy until Andrew is in a box.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, don't get me wrong, everyone has to be held accountable
Yes.
for what they've done.
Absolutely.
But
Regardless
there-
of who you are.
But you have to have that midpoint. I mean, let's say that Epstein did kill himself. If he did, well, let's look at that situation, because the first thing you think of when you hear that is loads of people might go, oh, he killed himself, that's great, because he was a horrible guy. Okay, well, now he's not serving time for what he did.
Yes.
So
And we're not
let's
able
look
to
at
find
him-
out the truth.
Exactly. Now we have so many more unanswered questions that we will probably never be able to answer.
And that's the backdrop of all of this.
Exactly.
Is the fact that we have had no one held to account.
Well,
for this.
the
Exactly.
only people we've had held to account for Epstein are Brits.
Yeah.
Andrew, the royal formerly known as Prince, who's lost everything. Okay, he's not lost his liberty, but I mean, he's lost everything. Come on. He was a prince. He's now not a prince. And Ghislaine Maxwell, who's serving effectively a life sentence in the US.
Forgotten
Yeah.
about
But
That's
what
crazy.
about the Americans?
Well, exactly.
You know, what about the goddamn Americans? What about Bill Clinton?
Yeah.
What about Bill Gates, who were all at the Epstein Island?
This is the thing, like you said at the beginning.
Way more
I
than
think,
Andrew.
like a lot of people, especially if you're in the kind of like the journalism world, you've been on a journey with this story.
Yes.
You've been from one end to the other, and I mean, there's theories out there that I'm more leaning towards now that Epstein was an entire orchestrated thing in order to get wealthy, rich, famous royals and everything like that under some kind of mass blackmailing scheme for power. Everything's about power and money. That's what we need to follow. And no, I'm not, because at the end of the day, no matter how much someone wants to try and convince me or give me much money, I'm not going to do anything with a child. So I still think they're still responsible for their actions. But let's look at the psychological angle here. There definitely seems to be a targeting of these huge names. And I think it needs to be looked at.
It's outrageous that no one has been held to account for this.
In America? No Americans.
Yeah, no Americans. And I mean, we have Ghislaine, who has been held accountable. But it
Yeah, but
feels,
she's
it
British.
feels like, but it feels like she's the scapegoat almost.
Oh, yeah. And she was such an easy scapegoat. You know, rich, daughter of a millionairess, British, you know, not in democratic circles, because remember, all of these decisions are being made in New York, a democratic state. So the
Why
whole
is
thing to me feels
why
like
is she
a
not
cover-up
naming
still.
names? I want to know why. You know, she's been incarcerated for how long now?
Yeah, she's been thrown under the bus.
She
why
is.
was she?
She must have been.
Well, I
offered a
think she
deal
was
or-
holding hope for a Trump pardon, but given how politicized this situation became later in the year, and of course we saw Marjorie Taylor Greene resign as a congressperson, split from Trump in part because of Epstein.
Musk's tweets about Trump. and the
Musk's
list.
tweets saying he was on the Epstein files. Huge pressure on Kash Patel and Dan Bongino in the FBI. It does feel like there is more of this to come over the next year. But wow, what a countdown. What a year we have had from two brilliant independent journalists. It has been so great to finally have you part of the Outspoken family this year. So Speaks Freely, you have done incredible independent journalism work. And of course, you can be found on YouTube and
YouTube,
X and all platforms, really. And you're going to keep it up
Oh,
in 2026?
absolutely. It's only going to get bigger and better from here.
I think that's true. I honestly do. I mean, you've done incredible work. We're so grateful because, of course, we use some of your brilliant
And I really
on-the-ground
appreciate that.
reporting, and it's so important that all of the Outspoken viewers go and support these amazing young independent journalists like yourself, and of course Lee Harris, who is addicted to news.
Hopefully not
on
much
X.
longer. Check this out. I've done that handle thing.
Oh, what do you want?
I've gone for my name, just Lee Harris. So it may well change, but apparently the links will still work, everyone. So when it's addicted to
But
news.
for the moment,
it's
addicted to news.
Absolutely.
Both brilliant independent journalists. I am so grateful for having you here today.
Thank you for Thanks having for us.
having me.
And let's see you again next year, right?
Anytime.
Which is
Absolutely.
tomorrow. My God, how crazy. How crazy. And tomorrow, at the start of 2026, we will still be continuing the countdown of the worst of 2025. We are going to be into the top 20 with two more brilliant independent journalists who you love, Kezia Noble and Based and Bougie, joining me on tomorrow's Superstar panel. So we are back 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Remember, there is no live uncancelled after show until Monday. But in the meantime, you can access all of my royal content on Substack at www.outspoken.live. Outspoken is also available as a podcast now. You can find us on Spotify. We're available as a video there, but we're also on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Please do subscribe on YouTube. Turn on the notification bell. Then you'll be alerted to our new episodes. And most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you.